Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Hall, Executive Vice President for Enterprise and Cyber Solutions at Leidos. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're extremely pleased to be sponsoring the Future of Naval IT panel. Everyone here knows the importance of information technology to the critical mission of the nation's military. Just last month, the Department of Defense released its broad plan to ensure our forces have leading-edge technologies needed for ever-changing global conflicts. Among those priorities, emerging technologies such as science and future generation wireless technology, trusted AI and autonomy, which are imperative to improving operations in future conflicts, and integrated sensing to counter advanced threats at the intersections of cyberspace and electronic warfare. It's a vision that we all, government and the private sector, support. At Leidos, our mission is to make the world safer, healthier, and more efficient through technology, engineering, and science. That underpins the work that we do for our naval and maritime customers every day. Our nation's technological infrastructure is the backbone of our nation's power. It ensures the security of our people by improving the efficiency and tactical edge of our warfighters. Leidos is investing in the people, processes, and technology required to develop secure enterprise technology infrastructure and full-spectrum cyber solutions for the Navy. We look forward to what's to come in the future of naval IT. Now we will begin our panel, and I will turn it over to our moderator, Jared Serbu, Deputy Editor of the Federal News Network.
Great, thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here to start day 2 of Sea Air Space this year. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us. If you were here with us last year, the focus that we had with Naval IT leadership was really focused on cloud computing, and we had a great discussion at that time. This year, we're going to zoom, I think, way out and talk about broader IT modernization issues across the Navy and the Marine Corps. And I think that theme is pretty consonant with the strategies that you see coming out from DoD, from the MILDEPs, from the services themselves, which really incorporate things like cloud, like AI, like 5G into a broader, what the Navy would call an information superiority vision. And I think that even the latest example of that was the latest DoD cloud strategy, which is now called the software modernization strategy, which gets to this idea that, you know, we're going to use these things intelligently and not just do things like go to the cloud because it's the cool thing to do. So my guests are Aaron Weiss, the Chief Information Officer for the Department of the Navy, and Jennifer Edgin, the Assistant Deputy Commandant for Information for the Marine Corps. I won't waste a lot of time with introductory remarks since we've only got 45 minutes. Do want you all to be part of the conversation as early and as much as possible. So as soon as a thought pops into your head, please run up to this microphone and we'll get to audience Q&A as quickly as possible. But Aaron, why don't you start us off, talk a bit about maybe some thoughts on the ISV and whatever else you want to tell us about where the dawn is headed with the future of IT.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So a little about 2.5 years ago, we released the Information Superiority Vision, and it outlines a directional vision for the Department of Navy, Navy and Marine Corps, and really 3 main thrusts. The importance to modernize the department's information environment and to move us sort of out of the 90s into the 3rd decade here of the 21st century in terms of our architectures and our technologies, to really drive innovation on that modernized platform, innovation which should be used and will be used to provide sailors and Marines a competitive advantage that they need to win. And that's where we touch into things like AI, 5G, and other emerging technologies. And then the third underlying thrust is called Defend, and it's really getting after the business of defending the department's information wherever it is, whether it's in transit or at rest or in the defense industrial base, you name it, and really to right the record that we have shown over the last 15 years, which has not been flattering to the department in terms of our ability to defend that information. And so for the last 2.5 years, we've been driving that. I think some of the things you touched on in your opening remarks really intersect with that information superiority vision. And it's an exciting time. It feels like there's a ton of traction across the board, across all 3 of those areas. And it's heartening to think that at this point, There are now literally thousands of sailors, Marines, civilians across the department working the problem of modernization, right? There are teams of people now focused on moving forward in software modernization, and to your point, not just because cloud is cool, and really driving us forward. So it's I think the information superiority vision continues to endure as that directional element, but it's the underlying work that it continues to spawn, which drives the department forward.
Jen, talk about how the Marine Corps sees the big picture here too, and maybe you can also talk about the structure of the DCI, because that's a relatively new organization within the Marine Corps that I think is designed to sit a level above what we would think of as traditional IT and take a broader view of the information landscape, if that's a good way to think about it.
That's a great way to think about it. And so building on what Aaron said, broadening our perspective really began with General Neller during his competency, and standing up Deputy Commandant Information, because he realized that as we shifted focus from Afghanistan and Iraq to our near peer competition, that we needed to organize a bit differently for that. We needed to bring together all of our, I'll say, information capabilities under one umbrella. This was furthered by now General Berger with his Force Design 2030 initiative, which really lays out the case for change and how we need to continue to evolve as a Marine Corps. Critical to that is being able to operate in the information environment. And to put it in perspective of why this is so important, I did a quick data lookup before coming up here on stage. By 2025, there's expected to be 175 zettabytes of data and information. And that's probably, that seems like a really big number, but if you were to actually put that data on disks, you could go to the moon 23 times. So this is a huge space that we as Marines need to be able to operate in. So this is where our competitors are. This is where our opponents are. And so we need to be able to work in this space. And that involves modernizing our people, our talent management efforts, our processes, our doctrine for how we do this, and most importantly, our technology. And so we're, from the Marine Corps perspective, bringing the Commandant's vision, nesting within the information superiority vision to modernize our information space.
I'd like to talk a bit more about some of the discrete changes that have been made in both the Navy and the Marine Corps, and some of what you're working on. Certainly a lot of this is strategy driven, but I think it's fair to say a lot of what has happened over the past couple of years was thrust upon you by the pandemic, for a lot of good, really. Talk about the extent to which things like CVR, the move to Office 365, how much of that was accelerated by the pandemic, and how are you picking that up and running with it into the future?
Yeah, I think the pandemic didn't necessarily change the trajectory of modernization, but it absolutely was an accelerant. If you would have talked to the acquisition community and the PEOs pre-pandemic, they would have told you that the modernization moves were probably a 5-year program. And I think what the pandemic did was it pulled it left dramatically, to the extent that it's now basically a 1-year program. In fact, about a year ago, as of now, we literally got an act of Congress passed that allowed us to reprogram hundreds of millions of dollars to get after the modernization work, to implement the Navy's flank speed program and the network modernization. So I think the pandemic provided the impetus. CVR within that helped lay down the template, and I think it helped people understand and unlock sort of that power of distributed workforce, collaborative computing, leveraging the cloud, and it brought it home to everyone. And within short order, I think people came forward and said, I need that, that's a requirement. We need that going forward, which we didn't have that kind of conversation before. So I think the pandemic created the urgency, it allowed us to shift left multiple programs, and it sort of brought home to people the power of what that transformation will bring to them. So it's been and I never want to say that pandemic is helpful, but it has been useful to further and shift the modernization programs.
And Jen, the Marines are ahead on a lot of this, right? I mean, you're done with the 365 transition. Talk more about the discrete things that you've done.
So first, starting with our technology, well, I appreciate the compliment of being done. I will say we are well on our way with our journey because we do see this as a journey. We started with our Office 365 implementation, really getting after some of those user pain points. If you talk to us back in 2018, you get user feedback of the network is, messed up. I can't get what I need. I'm getting my mailboxes overrun all the time. And so we had started a conscious journey to get after those user problems. And the pandemic created that space where we had to rapidly accelerate. And from that, we were able to learn a lot about how to transition from a legacy state to a future state, how to engage with our users, how to use a data-driven approach to drive some of our decisions about where we go next. So while our first phase is done, now we're on to our second phase of actually looking at some of our discrete, I'll say data and information lakes, some of our discrete SharePoint environments, and actually moving them to an enterprise solution that's widely available. And this has really helped us because our vision and what you see reflected in the Commandant's Force Design Future, what you see in Deputy Commandant information strategies and policies, is really the use of enterprise services, harnessing these modern environments so that we can grow and adapt to any of the situations where Marines will find themselves. And I'd say before, the pandemic, that was an aspirational view. There were a lot of folks that did it. They give you the head nod of, yeah, that sounds great, but they didn't have an emotional connection to it. Now they do. So this has really opened up a lot of opportunities for why this type of work is so important. I'd also like to talk on the people and process side as well, because I focused on the technology side, on this enterprise cloud, some of our enterprise services, but equally important is how we're modernizing our talent structure. If we look at the information environment, we need to have professionals, Marines and civilians, who have a depth and breadth of skills. So last month we released and started our journey with our 17XX modernization. So this is where we're modernizing a Marine occupational specialty to offer career pathways for enlisted and officers to build out a core skill set in this place and have a long-term plan for training and growth, both in experiential and educational opportunities. We're also looking at our civilian talent. We have our Information Development Institute. Again, an opportunity that we saw during the pandemic to offer training online opportunities to modernize and upskill our civilian workforce. So these are some very tangible examples of what we've done outside of the technology space during this period.
Yeah, let's stick with the talent management piece for a little bit. As both services shift from an environment where you're running a lot of your own on-prem services to one where you're consuming more commercial cloud services, what different skill sets, what different talents does that call for that you maybe don't have as much as you need right now?
I think the big change as you move to provided capability in lieu of created capability, right? So as we start to consume cloud-delivered capability and compute capacity, it moves us into an environment where we're more focused on the outcome, and we are more focused on, if you will, the product of the information environment and thinking about it. And we've begun the conversation within the department on that product management mindset in sort of an agile approach, where we're thinking about need versus kind of big R requirement. We're thinking about the demand signal from the Navy and Marine Corps in terms of capability versus, we took it through a committee or we took it through a governance board. And, I think it continues to up the clock speed and our ability to respond. And so we're going to look for a workforce that's able to manage not at the technical eaches level, but at the outcome and capability level. Doesn't mean we don't need to focus on the technical side of this, but it's going to allow us to be much more responsive from a demand signal side. It'll present challenges on the workforce end because we're going to have to bring people along and allow them to evolve and retool to that place, but it'll be a huge opportunity as well. It'll allow us to be more closely aligned with how industry views and makes use of technology capability in the same way. And it'll help provide us a hook to keep people engaged. And so I think it's an exciting transition, but it's one that we're going to have to work very hard to understand and reach out to people and to help move them in that way of thinking. It's early stages for that transition, but it is going to be an important transformation.
Jen, any different thoughts on Marine Corps workforce needs?
So building on the what Aaron said here, really what we're trying to do is show a pathway. And show a pathway, and that pathway can look a little different for our uniformed Marines and our civilians, and because we want to create an environment where folks can adapt and grow. For civilians, that could look like coming into the government for a couple of years, going back out to industry, doing some things in industry, and really offering kind of those flexibilities back and forth. So this is challenging kind of that traditional government mindset of you're hired in like right out of college and you retire 20, 30, 40 years later. There's a lot of, so that's in and out of government, but also within the government. How do we have experiential opportunities to move sometime in the Marine Corps over to the Dawn, to the Navy, other services to offer those career roadmaps and pathways. So we want our particular civilian workforce to feel when they come in to work with the Marine Corps, it's the land of opportunities. And to be able to further those opportunities and create that really a great place to work. For our uniformed Marines, the 17XX modernization is just really our ticket to success and modernization there, because it offers a uniformed Marine, an officer or an enlisted, a chance to build a wealth of skills to apply them in multiple different scenarios, and then to really become a subject matter expert in their field. That's well-rounded and very topical to today's challenges.
Getting back to the title of the panel, the Invisible Battlefield, want to make sure we talk a bit about delivering capabilities to the tactical side of the house, because we haven't really gone there yet. What are the biggest challenges that you all see in terms of delivering things like cloud all the way out to the edge and just having a network infrastructure that can be kind of seamless and reach all the way back from the enterprise out to the tactical space?
Yeah, I think the challenges are similar to what they are on the ashore side, with different angles. Modernization is critical, and so the Navy and Marine Corps are working to modernize their tactical networks. The Navy is working to modernize their afloat platforms in terms of canes, the containerization of applications, the ability to push code into containers at speed is going to be critical. Importantly, also on the tactical edge, it's the modernization of the network links. And what you see with Project Overmatch is exactly that. It's the modernization of that tactical edge communication capability, and really using that modernization to kind of lower barriers and silos within the tactical networks. So I think the combination of that modernization along with the tactical edge network modernization is what will enable kind of that at speed element to happen in parallel with what's happening on the shore side networks. It's an exciting time. It's a different path for the tactical networks, but it will be important that at the end of this that we're able to have the enterprise networks and the tactical networks be able to link up. We had somebody in the department talk about it in terms of It's like the Transcontinental Railroad, right? They started building at the east and started building at the west. They came together at Promontory, and it was well planned, and the trains were able to pass. And so we have to make sure that while these two network modernization paths are happening, we know that at the end of this, we're going to be able to seamlessly pass information between them. And that need and that capability to securely move any information from anywhere to anywhere is going to be increasingly important as emerging technologies like AI and others happen and create capability. Those emerging technologies deployed at the tactile edge are going to consume information that will come from anywhere, not just within tactile edge networks. They may need to source information from beyond all the way out into partner networks and be able to have that information flow seamlessly. So it is a set of trajectories that we work to manage, and we know that there's an intersection of those trajectories here.
And on the Navy side, I think it was a big objective of the new engine contract recompete to collapse NMCI and OneNet and all the different enclaves into a single coherent structure. Can you give us an update on how that's gone? Is that progressing as quickly as you would like to see?
I mean, my greatest strength is impatience. It's also my greatest weakness. So is it ever going fast enough? No. But it is making great strides. In fact, the flank speed program is now on the cusp of starting to deploy into OneNet. There's a network consolidation program that's going to take literally hundreds of accepted and legacy networks and put them through a process to look at what needs to be folded into that enterprise network. So we are seeing in the future, and hopefully the near future, that true convergence of all those separate networks on the Navy side. The Marine Corps has already done that to the greatest extent. They will wax poetic about deploying the mix-in forward. I love the Marine Corps. And so I think it's bringing the Navy along with that. It's a process, but great strides are being made here.
I was just going to give Jen the chance to brag about the Marine Corps' progress on network modernization. What's that allowed you to do once you're in a place where you can say that you've got one network now?
So it really opens up the doors to have, I'll say, the varsity level discussion. So we did a lot of really hard work of collapsing domains. We did a lot of hard work in the design of, when we say the mix-in, that means the entirety of our network. And our network being our infrastructure, our platforms, our security, our data, and our software services. And we didn't get there by chance. We did a lot of data analysis. We did a lot of bringing folks together. We did a lot of design thinking work and this resulted in really our keystone document that kind of took this invisible space that people couldn't see and put down, what does our future look like? And this was called our Marine Corps Information Environment Blueprint. So think of it this way. Would you ever hire a roofer, a framer, a plumber, and an electrician and say, build me a house and send me the bill later? No. You would actually bring those folks together. You would make a design. You would talk about how these different subsystems need to work together. We did that. We did that for our mix-in. It was not like, and this is hard because it's not super flashy work that you have robots running around, but this is vital, necessary work that you have to do in order to prepare yourselves to go after that next level of technology, that next level of operations, that next level of business process. And so because we did that hard work and we really stayed the course, and it was hard to bring the stakeholders together, it was hard to make the business case, it was hard to make the mission case, but once we broke through that, now our discussions are changing. Our discussions aren't should we, it's how might we do this differently in the future? How do we want it to work against our Force Design 2030 objectives? We're not having the discussion of, is the green light still blinking? It's having the discussion of how are we going to use this to our strategic advantage in the information environment.
And I think part of this is just also delivering a better user experience to individual sailors and Marines. I think one thing that y'all have done is, for example, it used to be the case that every time you deployed, you got a new email address, which is, I think, no longer true. Talk a bit, both of you, if you would, about what you have done and what you're trying to do just to make life easier from an IT user perspective. Aaron, I know you hate the word user, but IT consumer, however we want to put it.
You know my joke about user, right?
Go ahead and tell her.
So what do CIOs and drug dealers have in common? They're the only two people who call their customers users. So yeah, we've banished the user word. I think your example is right. It's not uncommon to have a sailor or a Marine accumulate a number of email addresses over their career. I've only been in government for just under 4 years, and I already have several of these things, right? And so we've got to get at the problem of identity, and not just because it's convenient, because it would be great to be the same person for your whole career electronically, but also because it's foundational to zero trust. It's foundational to how we need to move to secure information and pair information with the person, not gate information by do you have the right password. And so we have to do that. We're working that identity problem. Again, the pandemic has helped shift that left with the move to flank speed and the Marine Corps' Office 365 solution. And so it's an exciting time. I think the good news is this modernization opens doors and creates capabilities to other things we want to do. But at the same time, it's going to improve the experience of people who require this capability every day, and even as something as simple as you can be the same person for your whole career.
Looks like we have our first volunteer. Let's go to audience Q&A. Sir, thanks for stepping up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Stephen Howard from Accenture's Organizational Analytics practice. I'm a Navy subdad, a Marine Corps father-in-law, Navy uncle, and unfortunately an Army uncle too. There's always one. I wanted to ask you a question about, for both of you, about the pace of change, experiential learning, innovation speed. There's a well-adopted or increasingly adopted practice in industry of behavioral experimentation, of agile 2-week, 3-week sprints to experiment. You're talking about upskilling your people, creating experiences for them. How receptive is Navy and Marine Corps to creating an environment for selected individuals to have these rapid 2-week, 3-week sprint experiments to drive forward innovation in the organizations? Thank you.
Start. From the Marine Corps perspective, particularly in my organization, we actually use agile principles across the board. I, as the Assistant Deputy Commandant, we actually took these principles and applied them to our entire portfolio of work. We call that our campaign plan. And we have quarterly program increments. We have 3-week sprints. We have trained up our organization to start to operate in this way. And it's starting to proliferate out to all of our providers, all of the folks that we engage with. We've trained civilians. We've brought in contract support where needed, and really see our adoption of this mindset as setting the stage for acquisition to fall in and adopt this mindset. We're also arming our Marines with these tools to be able to talk in this outcome-based way, and also to change the expectation. Because if, again, pre-pandemic, we're delivering a capability in a year, great. Now we've shown that we need to greatly accelerate that to meet the needs of Marines, to meet the needs of the future. What I'm most proud of in terms of our adoption of Agile is that it is nested within the broader force design framework. That framework, starting at the commandant's level, is based on experimentation, based on continuous learning. Because if we look at the information space, if we look at this invisible battlefield, we have to reassess our assumptions continuously. And Agile, these types of development frameworks, whether applied to end item products and software or to an office environment, really create the methodology to allow us to do that.
Aaron, I'd like you to weigh on this too, because I know OSD is very supportive of any efforts to make that kind of agile mindset and methodology the norm and remove whatever policy barriers there are to having that just be the way work is done. How does that look to you from the Dawn level? Do you see those barriers? Are you working to get rid of them and again, make this the norm?
We are working to flatten those barriers. With the adoption of agile methodology, the DevSecOps development approach, we're working hard to enable the ability to share solutions among those development environments. So, for example, working to create reciprocity agreements, at least between the Navy and Marine Corps. If we could do that, right, within the family, and do that. And importantly, we now have an agreement with the Air Force to enable reciprocity between the Navy's Black Pearl development environment and the Air Force's Platform One environment. So you're seeing this groundswell happen amongst the MILDEPs, between services, and it's driven by a demand signal from the people actually doing the development. We want to do that. But we've got to work on how to enable that, how to do that within the construct of kind of the approval authority, et cetera, that we have. But it's happening. It's happening. Is it going fast enough? No, but it's happening.
All right. Sir, please.
Hi, Dr. Nathaniel Husted, NAVSEA Warfare Centers. So first off, as a digital native, thank you so much with the modernization efforts. I love the current user experience. It's been, maybe I'm one of the few people, love the flank speed changes. This has been great. So following on the comments of Agile and DevSecOps, with the push towards cloud infrastructure, which I think we've moved very fast recently during this pandemic, and then the onboarding of Black Pearl for programs, and then LIFT and NAVSEA and the other warfare organizations, fusion environments for S&T projects. Where do you all see the organic engineering capability that is really unique to the Navy? Where do you see this organic engineering capability needing to move to support a lot of this embedded software and local software going forward to really prep us on that left side of the life cycle to support many of these tactical needs that you all have spoken about today?
Yeah, back to my earlier comments, I think, the Navy and NAVWAR especially has an incredibly rich engineering capability that they've used in the past to stand up technical solutions. I think the transition is back to my earlier comments that it will be less about engineering each bit and byte as we move to cloud with sort of its innate capability, and more about engineering the cybersecurity of that, coupled with the capabilities that we're developing on top of that. So it is kind of a shift, and we've used the analogy of product management versus project management, if you will. But I think that's the opportunity and the transformation that we'll have to make.
And building on that, as a career civil servant entering my 20th year as a card-carrying engineer, I really want to kind of answer your question and focusing on the value proposition of what does government engineering provide. Back to the product management analogy, we have to use our products in all different types of conditions. And these are conditions that are unique to the military. So what the value proposition is, how we design, how we take into account all of those conditions with the best of commercial technology or government technology, because we have a really robust government research and development apparatus. And government engineering is perfectly designed to bring those things together. And so when I look at the future of what does it mean to be a government engineer, I see that product focus. I also see leading the way in bringing together the best of the ideas to meet our military mission.
Great. Please.
Dr. Juha Korpela, Fleet Forces Command Director of Quantitative Modeling and Data Science. I have two questions. The first question, the answer to which is not Jupiter and Advana, but my question is, what are we doing in terms of attention, investment, and expertise to modernize our fundamental upstream data systems. And what I mean specifically for that has nothing to do with cloud, but has everything to do with the data models and the integrity of the data. Why this is so important, because all of our AI machine learning activities really hinge on streaming good, high-quality data, which we don't currently have in the fundamental upstream legacy systems. That's my first question. My second question is this, is that if you are at a command and suddenly the connectivity to the cloud goes down, you cannot send email to your colleague sitting in the next office. So are you confident that we have enough robustness in terms of our communication links to the cloud so that in adverse situations, we actually can email each other?
I'm going to touch your second question first, and then maybe Jen take a run at the first question.
Okay.
We'll divide and conquer. Your second question is, am absolutely confident that the cloud will remain available, and we are increasing the robustness of the network connectivity to the cloud now through the network modernization programs that are happening. So I think if we look on the other end of this modernization and shift to cloud, we will see a higher availability percentage than we historically saw with on-prem, to use your example, email servers in the data center with our previous network architecture. I think the outcome of that will be higher reliability, absolutely. The second element is we were also coupling this with the ability to access cloud-based resources without having to traverse at all times a government network, and the ability to do those things over the internet. So we're enabling some resilience through Zero Trust to leverage alternate connectivity, which gives us more options and resiliency there.
So I'll actually take a run at your second question and then end with your first, because I agree that with modernization in the cloud, with the modernization at our various transport layers, we're designing our end item systems, our end item applications to be able to harness and maximize the use of that. But I also have a very demanding customer who wants to ensure that they will have the data and the information they need, even if they are disconnected. So we are designing our future to account for that. And I noticed that I use the word design because typically in government acquisition, it starts with a requirement. Yes, we want some functional requirements, but we also want the design. How do you want it to work? So if we're in a disconnected state, then who is disconnected? What is the decision maker? What do they need to do? What data and information do they need to have access to? And so we've used the principle of the service blueprint quite a bit to talk about what's that decision or mission thread and overlay it with the access to the data and system architecture so we can see what are those connection points. I also want to highlight that the commitment to data, we've launched a bunch of, I'll say again, modernization efforts with our MOSs. So we actually have our 26XX community that it has a data science focus now. So we have Marines who understand data flows, who understand how data needs to move and is positioned within our operational units to optimize that. And I'll end with, I'm very excited because we just onboarded our service data officer within DCI to bring together our functional community to further these data efforts.
Great. Maybe I may have time for two more if one more person wants to try and sneak in after this, but sir, please go ahead.
Thank you. John Clem, Johnson Controls. And first, congratulations to both of you on marshaling your organizations across the entire Navy Marine Corps team to deploy Microsoft Teams and other tools to support the Navy Marine Corps team through the pandemic. My question is, how are we doing in marshaling our teams to respond to operational technology and cyber securing operational technology and integrating that information so that better decisions can be made in the logistics and infrastructure community to support force generation and force sustainment? Thanks.
I'm going to take advantage of your question to get on my soapbox. So to your question about cybersecurity, and I know you're asking it specifically as it relates to operational technology, but I'm going to open the aperture up and talk about cybersecurity for a minute as its own topic. We are getting after the issue of cybersecurity right now in a different way. I have made the assertion now publicly multiple times. You may have heard me say it, but I believe that the way that we do cybersecurity in the Department of Navy is wrong. We view cybersecurity as a compliance problem, and it is most definitely not a compliance problem. We have 15 years of track record that proves that the current approach to cybersecurity, driven by a checklist mentality, is wrong. It doesn't work. And so we believe, and we have a combined Navy and Marine Corps team now who meets regularly, who's driving this forward in 90-day sprints, in an agile methodology. We believe that the problem of cybersecurity is much more akin to how the military views the problem of readiness. It is a much more holistic view, and readiness is a state of being that a commanding officer manages every day. And you exist on that continuum of readiness. You manage it through your people, your equipment, your training, your supply chain, all the things that go into creating readiness. That is a better model for how we view the problem of cybersecurity. Now, that's easy to say. It's hard to bring to life. And so that is what we're working in terms of doing it. And that will mean we're going to make fundamental changes to how we use the RMF process. We're never going to get away from RMF. It's mandated to us. But as a pilot, I would say you can't fly an airplane by a checklist. Checklist is an invaluable tool, but it is not how you fly an airplane. I would also say that the idea of using RMF and granting an ATO that has a 3-year lifespan is wrong-headed. An ATO needs to be something that you're earning every day, all the time, with this mindset. Again, I'm going to use an aviation analog, with this mindset of currency, that you maintain cyber currency that enables you to continue to re-earn your ATO, and then measuring it holistically through this lens of readiness. That's a transformation we need to take, and we're starting that. Operational technology will get swept up in that because it is a part of cybersecurity writ large. I won't even get on the soapbox about OT at this point, but I think much is happening in this cybersecurity area, and it's happening under the banner of a program called Cyber Ready, and you may have heard about that.
Stay on your soapbox for another half a second, because a point that I've heard you make before is that the 3-year ATO periodic process is not just inadequate. It actually gives you bad security because it generates complacency. Can you just give us a second on that?
It does, because you go through an ATO process, you fill out your 600-plus line RMF spreadsheet. Takes you 1.5 years if you're lucky. You do 10,000 push-ups, and we'll give you an ATO. And what's the first thing that happens? Somebody goes, "Oh, I'm cyber secure. We're done. Job done. Got that for 3 years." Well, maybe you were secure once while you were filling out that spreadsheet. But you know what? Software changed. Time moved on. The adversary acquired new TTPs, and you're no longer secure. And I think that what happens now is we get a program getting an ATO, a capability gets an ATO, then nothing happens. And 3 years later, it ends up on my desk as a Department of Navy CIO in something called a high-risk escalation. And now we have to figure out what to do with that thing, right? Are we going to shut it down? Are we going to put it in a box? What's going to happen? How are we going to mitigate that? It drives bad behavior that's wrong-headed. Again, I'll go back to the pilot equation. A long time ago, the FAA gave me a pilot's license. And that happened because I demonstrated a minimum level of competency behind the controls of an aircraft to an FAA pilot examiner. That license never expires, and it's good until I die or they take it away from me. But I can only use it if I maintain currency. And that's done through education, that's done through training. There's a physical aspect to it, there's an operational aspect to it. And only if I maintain currency can I exercise the privileges. The ATO should function in a similar way. It's sort of your right to operate, which you then need to earn every day. There's my soapbox.
Good. All right, we're going to sneak one more in. We got to be quick. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure thing. So Rob with Stiefel, just taking up the rear here, but you mentioned NGen just like to get some of your thoughts just around, some of your expectations, how it's sort of going, lessons learned, and, what's like the next step to it.
How's NGen going? It's going. We are modernizing the Navy's network. We are pulling it into the third decade of the 20th century. And there are multiple tracks to this. So everyone knows about flank speed, in parallel with the Marine Corps O365, so that's to move to cloud productivity. But at the same time, there's a network modernization program that is happening at a core transport layer. And we are applying a design called the Naval Digital Platform, the NDP. And it is a set of technology standards which are being implemented across the board, which pull in things like software-defined networking, SD-WAN, capabilities that happen in conjunction with zero trust, an optimized transport layer, and a transport agnostic approach that will allow us to continue the modernization at the base transport level. That's happening in conjunction with the NMCI NGen program, and it intersects a lot of this cloud capability. So I think that the NGen that you'll see in another 6 to 12 to 18 months is going to be fundamentally different than kind of the NGen NMCI four-letter word network that the Navy has experienced in the past. It'll be a fundamentally different network.
Jan, any final thoughts to take us home?
I'd just like to thank you, Jared, and thanks everybody for coming. This is my first panel live in person in 2 years, so it's much more exciting to speak to humans than your little computer screen. So I hope you take away from our discussion today that the Marine Corps is on a journey to ensure that Marines are armed with all of the capabilities that they need to operate in the information space as part of the Commandant's 2030 initiatives. I wanted to say, change is hard, but refusal to change is irrelevance. So please take away that the Marine Corps is committed to being thoughtful. The Marine Corps has a plan and has really adopted the mindset of continuous learning as we shift to the future fight.
All right, we are over time. My apologies to the Navy League. Please help me thank our guests, Jennifer Edgen and Aaron Weiss.